Hello and welcome to our today's webinar in which we will discuss about how to make the move to a modern IGA. My name is Manuela Ollhäuser, Marketing Manager at the IC Consult Group, and our presenters today are Jan Patrick, Srikanth and Uwe from Saviynt and IC Consult. And before we start with the presentation or with the discussion, just some notes from my side. You will all be on mute during this webinar. So if you have a question or a comment to our ongoing conversation, please type in your question or your comment in the chat and we will either include them directly in the conversation or answer them at the end of the webinar. And we will, as always, record the session so that you will receive an email with the link to this recording in the next days. So thanks to everybody that's joining, and now I'm handing over to you, Patrick.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah, thank you from my side as well. Thank you that you take your time. So today we would like to talk about making the move to modern IGA. To introduce myself quickly, so my name is Jan Patrick Vöhrs. I work for Saviynt as a solution engineer across EMEA, and I'm supporting you guys, basically on all technical questions and all that. But today I'm the moderator of our discussion across that topic we already mentioned. And yeah, before we start, I just wanted to quickly introduce you how Saviynt sees that particular move or what kind of challenges you face. And we all know that zero trust is one of the major topics, but zero trust identity for modern enterprise is a really big challenge in there. So it's really something which grows over the environments and all that. So we have seen that you have to facilitate the zero trust and that you have also to change your processes. So the thing is that in a modern world, there's so many things changing quickly. There is nothing really staying for a long time. There are new technologies, there are new methodologies. And this is why we see that also you basically to have a successful IGA program need to run on a modern solution, which helps you to grow and to expand that over the environment and different scenarios you have to cover. And the most important thing is risk. So risk awareness and to report on risk is really something which is driving IGA. So that's something we see, and it's not just on internal employees, it's also about partners, customers, but also technical accounts, bot IoT stuff, or in the cloud, there could be workloads. All these kind of things need to be tackled and managed, and that's something we can help you with as a Saviynt with our solution. But that's basically quickly about us and how we see that. Today, I would like to discuss that also with our partner, IC Consult, to understand how they see the world, what they have seen in the past in various projects, and how they tackle their projects. So then, as I said, open discussion. Feel free to raise questions. So whenever you have something in mind or you would like to share your view, or you have maybe also seen some challenges in other places, we're happy to get you into this discussion because we would like to see that as well, so that we have this open discussion across all of us. Okay, cool. So I stop now my screen share so that we can focus on our discussion and that we can focus on our interview. And to start, basically, it's, let's say we start from a top and then we go deeper into the technology pieces and bits and businesses. But when we start now, the first question which came into our mind was like, okay, what does a good IGA modernization program look like? So back to you guys, Uwe and Srikanth.
Oh, just a quick introduction from our side, right? Uwe, I mean, probably if you can start from your side, then I'll follow.
Okay, so my name is Uwe Gründel. I think I'm not that important concerning the Saviynt stuff, because I think you are one of the longest people I know working for Saviynt or with Saviynt. So I'm working since 20 years as technician, as an operations guy with IGA solutions. So mostly since 2002, yes. I started mostly in one of the biggest IGA projects in Germany, or maybe even outside. It was a huge automobile company, and I worked there for 15 years. I got a lot of experience in there of the different branches, different products we integrated, and also enterprise, customer IGA, and so on. And then I started to work in different projects as an architect. So I'm working mostly in parallel with 3 or 4 different customers, different products. And I think I get a good knowledge of all the different requirements from the customers. And that's why I'm today in this call. I'm also working currently in 2, sometimes 3 different Saviynt projects. So I will hand over to Srikanth.
Yeah, thanks, Uwe. My name is Srikanth. I work as senior consultant with IC Consult. I also take care of the role of practice lead, or we call it a center of excellence in IC Consult. I carry about 10 plus years of experience in identity management, governance, and various other topics. I started with working on legacy products like Sun Identity Manager, Oracle Identity Analytics, and various other technologies. My profile is predominant on Saviynt, as we pointed out. So I've been working with Saviynt since 2015, start of 2015. I worked with various companies, including Saviynt, worked with Deloitte, Infosys, and various other big companies. And right now I'm with IC Consult, wherein I take care of the practice. I also participate in, or my other part of job is to technically kind of lead the projects. I do the implementation support and requirement gathering and everything. You name it, we do it at Saviynt. And also, I look forward for this particular discussion here. Yeah.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, sorry for jumping over you, not introducing. Yeah, so let's get to the first question, as already outlined. So when we speak about IGA modernization program, what is a good one? So how does it look like?
Okay, I'll probably kind of pick it up, and probably we can have a comment from Uwe as well. Okay. Probably I would describe the modernization in a couple of points, or 2 different pointers. One, the migration from on-prem to cloud is something which all the organizations these days are looking for. Okay. Reasons behind that could be scalability issues for the on-prem setup, or the legacy, the IAM products getting kind of extended right now. Let's take the case of Sun Identity Manager or Oracle Identity Analytics, which people are kind of moving from those legacy products, and even OIM, if I have to kind of say, right? So I don't hear much about OIM these days in the market, but I think going to cloud is the in thing right now, wherein much of the organizations want to move to cloud and set up their environment or configure their environment accordingly, right? So that would be the first point which would strike me in terms of the IGA modernization. And also, one important thing, if I talk specifically about Saviynt, is a very strong platform wherein multiple functionalities or multiple IGA functionalities are supported in one go. We did not to kind of play around with multiple products, so you can do governance, identity management, access management in one single platform. So that adds a bit more value than other products, which wherein the customer needs to kind of play around with multiple products. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So when we also speak about that, so the project is also measured somehow. So the question is, how do you make the business case for investment, and how this is then measured with the customer, and how do you prepare that?
I mean, measurement can happen in two things again, right? If I think, or if I kind of concentrate on what I have done till now, or the experience from my past projects, one could be that wherein we decide what needs to be done. Okay, if I am pitching for Saviynt, or if I'm pitching for any product, primarily, is the product satisfying my business use cases or not, primarily, and also how much it is going to cost for me, right? So these two things are important. One, for under identifying a product and also going with that particular product. Okay, I don't want to buy a product, or the customer would not buy a product wherein half-baked solutions are available, right? So choosing a particular product which does both your on-prem, cloud, and various other things is very important in terms of investing into a product, right? So that's a primary thing which would come into my mind. Okay, and also how quickly the product is going to solve your use cases, right? If I have a complex use case which the other products could take, say, like 10-15 days, and Saviynt would be able to do it in 5 days, then I would make a wise decision of choosing something which would give me quick wins, right? So the return of investment has to be something which the management would kind of look for. Yeah. Uwe, do you want to kind of add up anything on this?
Yeah, it goes nearly in the same direction, but I think to provide information that the project is getting further, and then that you get return on invest, you need to convince also the customer at the beginning to define the KPIs that
Yep.
you might be able to measure. So how many processes do you have that really run automatically? How many joiners do you have in a month? How many manual steps do you start doing this, following this joiner process? And at some customers, you have the possibility. So at a big automobile company, we had around 30 parameters, which we collected already far before the real project starts. And then you could report every month, look, the amount of automatically assigned roles dramatically changed. That could reduce the amount of key user management, manual key user management. We reduced the team from 30 people later on to 20 people, or even less. And that also reduced the amount of failures that happen. So I think that is something, but I think nearly everyone knows that. But in a lot of projects, you say, okay, we need KPIs, we want to have it, maybe for each package. But if you don't start with it already before, at really the very first beginning of the project, you will not get the chance for that. And then you cannot report really what is the return on invest. And you need to put also this KPI, so something measurable, into the product. So maybe you define some key things you do, or you will report in the logging. You need to get the parameters out of the logs, or for maybe by analytics, so you can provide some reports. How many joiners did you have last month? How many joiners with certain criteria or levers or whatever? I think that is important. You need to have the information in the tool.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have seen now that basically such a project can be seen from two angles. So we have seen now Srikanth having a straight look from a technical perspective, saying, okay, we have to check about functions. Does it fit to my needs? But we have also seen from Uwe that we also have a look into business and what kind of impact do we have on the business. So the big question is, how should a project be run? Is it more from a business perspective, more from a technical perspective, or is it something like in parallel that both are working together? So what would you recommend? What have you seen?
So mostly, I would say business starts, because it's clear. If a car company, at the end, it needs to produce cars. So we need to go from bottom to top, and from top, we need to start and see what is the business case, the basic business case we need to follow. The cars need to be produced, and for that, we need to support these processes. But at the end, it doesn't mean we can define all the high-level processes with the business, and then we define the processes, but it's technically impossible to implement. And to provide some kind of standards and to use the features out of the box of the products, we need to stick to some kind of standards. So it's always, we go first to the business, we collect all the requirements, define the processes on a high level, and then we need to talk with Srikanth, the technical guys who know exactly how the technique works and what we can do and how we can do it. And then we will align together. Maybe, yeah, you start with dreams, but then you need to see, oh, not dreams can all come true. So what is realistic? And then you get back to the business. So it's some kind of, we need to work together, let's say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I just like to add a couple of points there as well, right, to what Uwe has mentioned. Because I come from a technical background and probably I'm doing the same work right now also. So what I feel is the product which we are investing into may not be completely customizable as well, right? Say, for example, Saviynt. Saviynt is more configuration driven than customization, right? So what I kind of again want to support this particular argument is the as these requirements may not be 100% converted into a use case or a working solution within the product. Okay, it could be any product, not just Saviynt, but when you kind of talk to the business and they say that, okay, my birthright provisioning needs to happen in say some seconds as soon as the user kicks in, right? There could be some other exceptional cases attached to it which cannot be solved within few seconds, and then the provisioning could happen, right? And also that exceptional cases could require customization onto the product. So it is the duty of
It seems there is a leak, but I cannot really take over from him. I think I know what he wants to say, but
it's some kind of a cliffhanger now. Okay, so it seems to be that his connection broke up. So yeah, the question is, so the big point, what we understood is that the business has also to adjust to the reality, but to be also flexible. So those goals can be changed based on technical requirements, but also feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Gentlemen, I'm sorry, my connection dropped. I'm sorry for that. So I would just like to kind of finish my particular point, which I was kind of talking in the last discussion, right? So I think it has to be a win-win for both the business and the system integrator, primarily because not everything can be converted. The complete as-is cannot be converted into a solution within any product. And in particular, if you are working with SaaS products, purely like Saviynt, wherein, as I said, customization is something which is secondary, but we concentrate to do everything using the out-of-box features itself. So that is something which also need to be kind of kept in mind when you are getting a requirement from business, and also how much it is, or how much can it be converted as a solution, right? So that's one thing which is very important to communicate back to the business when you are dealing with the use case.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so as we have seen, the business and the technical teams have to work together, but there is always this big change, as we have all seen with the digital transformation. So from on-prem to the cloud, and you as IC Consult have supported customers growing into that new cloud world. So the big question is now, what are some of the challenges organizations face in planning this move? So what do they have to keep in mind when they do these kind of changes?
So one major point I would raise there is we have a lot of identity models at the customers, and it might be needed that this identity model needs to be changed, because email is in the cloud. Email is one of the major attributes, and it's in the cloud. It's definitely unique. So a lot of customers don't have really the flexibility of using email as a unique attribute. But if you migrate to cloud, it is unique. It is required by all the applications. So as early as you can move to this email being a unique attribute, it might be just an attribute, but at the end in the cloud, if you want to use cloud applications, this will be unique. So
okay, and so that are the challenges you also see. So are there other challenges customer must overcome when we talk about this in general project step?
Okay, probably when like it can be kind of again like two to three things which something can happen during an implementation or a kickstart of a project. One, network connectivity is something which needs to be sorted out beforehand, wherein we don't sit down and start spending time on connecting or setting up the network connectivity between Saviynt or any product versus the target application, right? So that is very important, and I think that should be seamlessly done with the product that you're using, right? It has to be a one-time setup wherein we do it for each environment what we are trying to build, and then we pick it up from there, right? It should not be an issue when you're talking to a cloud-based application like Box, Dropbox, or GApps, basically. But it would be a hindrance or a bottleneck when you're working with on-prem applications like Active Directory, for example, right? So I think the first and foremost would be to sort out your network connectivity between the product, the IGA product, and the customer environment, and then rest of the application onboarding should be seamless, right? So that's a very primary thing which strikes me, right? Second, one important thing, or the other important thing is about the data quality, what you're receiving from the target applications, right? If there is a huge effort which needs to be done or put in place to clean up the data, these things need to be discussed beforehand, wherein before you kick off the project or kick off the implementation, right? I believe these should be kind of handled during the requirement discussions or even during the feasibility study, what we do, right? So in my sense, like these two are the important things which come as soon as, or which I think of as soon as we are kicking off a project or we are picking up an opportunity at our company.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So as we have seen, there are some technical things we have to keep in mind, the data model and all those kind of things. But we also discussed in the beginning that business is really important in this. So what are the typical stakeholders you have faced in such a project, and how do you secure the buy-in supporting you in this kind of change? As we have discussed as well, that they need to be flexible. So how do you do that, and how successful was it?
Okay, I mean, it's a difficult, it's something kind of very tricky to answer, because in a project there will be multiple parties or multiple stakeholders that will be involved, or that are involved at the start of the project till the end of the project, right? It's not something there's a start and end date for a particular IGA implementation, because it keeps on going, because you need to protect the data of the organization all the time. But if I have to kind of answer it from a project management perspective, it would be the stakeholders, or in particular, if you ask me, that would be the application owner teams, right? I would leave the business part for Uwe to answer, but if you ask me, it is very difficult to manage sometimes the application teams or the application owners, because getting their buy-in or getting their confidence is the most important thing once you launch a product or once you launch a project in an organization, right? Because there are very good chances that their work is going to reduce slightly, because the purpose of implementing an IGA or an IAM application or an IAM tool is to automate much of the processes, or as much as you can, right? So in that case, the workload on the application teams is going to kind of reduce drastically, and which kind of lead to some kind of a gap between you and the application owners, right? So I strongly believe that getting in the application owners into confidence is something which is very important, both technically and as well as from the business perspective, because they are the ones who help you to set up the application within a product, right? Any technical issues or any use cases, challenges, so they are the primary focus, or they are the primary contacts for you to kind of answer those questions, right? So to me, if I talk from a technical point of view, it would be absolutely the application owner teams and also the support team, if I have to add to it, right? So these two are the major parties which I would kind of concentrate to win their confidence, because we are playing with their application, or we are kind of integrating their application, wherein things need to happen seamlessly. We cannot kind of trigger something from the product or from the platform which would do something in the application directly, and they need to sit down and kind of clean it up. That should not happen. So I think application teams or the application owners involvement has to be in the discussions what you're doing, and also winning their confidence is most important. Uwe, anything to add up on that?
Yeah, I would say if we get to acceptance, it's really important to get them in the project before the project even starts. So it's not only application management, it's key user management. It's all the people that are involved, and IGA projects mostly lead to people, or the job for a lot of people will change, because the key user management at the first company I said, a big automobile company, there were 30 people sitting there and doing the user management. And then you all, if IGA comes, most of us will lose their job. And we do this job already 20 years. So it was really hard at the beginning to get them on the same table at the very first start and to tell them, no, you will not lose your job. Your job will change. Some of you might go into different directions, into different branches, but some of you will stay, and their task will change. But you will be part of the project. Otherwise, it will not be accepted and not successful, because they know exactly the behavior of all the people in all the corner cases.
Yep.
So all those areas that might get involved because their people will be reduced and their job will change, you need to help them at the very first beginning, to involve them in the project, to be part of it, and they will help after that really to get the acceptance that you need. And also the end users at a certain time. So if you have the chance already to have some, that's why I say key user and key user management. If you have some key users, they need to be already in the QA tests involved, because they give you a feeling whether the tool works as expected or not.
So to summarize all these points, I think we could say that communication and early integration of all the teams is key of such a project, so that you get buy-in from business, from the technical guys, but also from the stakeholders and application owners, because it has a change, such an IGA project, but really communication is key in these kind of topics. So as we discussed more the overall, how do I approach such a project and how do I structure it, I would like now to come to the more technical pieces and bits, or also from a business, but more the implementation view. So how do you know to start with an IGA program? So is it recertifications? Is it join or move a lever? And the same question I would like to raise to our audience. So I would like to know also from you, because I think some of you already have an IGA program. How did you start? What was your first step in an IGA project? So it would be good maybe that you can share that also in the chat while Uwe and Srikanth are answering to my question.
I would even say that depends on the customer himself, because usually they raise an IGA project because they have some pains. And that's mostly where you need to start. Minimum, what should be the result of this phase? Within an IGA project, you always start with identity, because it's all around identity. And then loading all the data in, provide transparency, provide the customer a good view, and also provide them with the data quality issues within their systems. Let them know what you need to change, because every data quality issue might lead to a risk, a security risk. And to make this visible is mostly first thing we will do. And yeah, I think later on we talk about GML, but even recertification is something you can really do at the beginning already. So if you have all the data read into the system with Saviynt, you are totally flexible, or also with other tools. To do a recertification, you do not need to fulfill all the steps automatically. It's just send the manager, you need to do that, provide an answer or a decision. However, this is implemented or provisioned into the target system, but it is now decided. You have the decision. You can do something with that, and you can minimize the risk.
Okay.
Yeah,
so the thing is, after you have now the identities, I think, as you mentioned, it's something where you can start then with the join and move or leave processes. But in what kind of order have you seen that in the past? So what was then a major topic and what was low prioritized? So what are the key features customers are looking for?
I mean, okay, it depends on two things, Patrick. One, what we are doing, whether it is a solution that we are building from scratch or is it a migration project, right? If it is something we are doing from scratch and the customer does not have an IGA product implemented already, then as Uwe pointed out, we start with identities. That's a prime focus because everything revolves around identity in any IGA product, correct? So first and foremost, as I said, like as Uwe pointed out as well, that like let's get the identities first and then plan your next steps accordingly, right? Understanding the priorities from the customer is very important in this situation or in this particular question, wherein the team or the system integrator clearly understands what they want or what the customer wants, and then plan the project plan accordingly, right? First, to start with, getting identities is very important. Then you plan what you are supposed to do, whether it is a self-service request or you're implementing a self-service, or whether you're just doing the certification or whether you're just doing governance. So I think the rest of the modules follow what the customer would like to implement or what they want to kind of move from their current implementation to Saviynt. But I feel that you have a bit more leverage when it is an implementation which is starting from the scratch, right? If it is a migration project, you need to be very careful about what you're shutting down in your current application or the current implementation to what you're moving to the new product, right? So you have to be a bit more careful in that particular scenario, because when you're shutting down something at your current implementation, the customer or the end user should be able to use the same functionality within the new product 100%. He should get all the, as I said, the as-is need to be replicated into the current product. So I feel there is a bit more, or the implementation team needs to be a bit more careful when they're doing the migration product. And also the migration can happen at any aspect, right? You can do just a segregation of duties for the first time, or you can just do a certification for the first time, then do your self-service or password reset activities later. So I would probably plan it according to how the customer wants, and also probably I would divide it what kind of implementation it is, whether it is something we are doing from scratch or something we are picking up as a migration project. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And what about automation? So you mentioned in the beginning, or not in the beginning, but that some people are afraid of an IGA project because they could lose their job because of automation. So what do you think about that?
In that area, it is right. The job will change because the things that run automatically do not need to be fulfilled by manual steps. That's mostly the driver in a lot of projects, that the time for onboarding of people is taking too long and it costs the company a lot of money. So in that case, it's definitely the case if you create tickets, send the tickets around, and a lot of people are involved in that. But I think that's quite normal that the things will change. and also the failures. You will reduce definitely the amount of failures in these processes. But that's a little bit related to the last part, to the last question. Here it is mostly cost, and the cost for people that get onboarded. And for us, what we see is the data quality in the target systems and the offboarding process is mostly a much higher risk, because even the manual processes do not really take care of that, because they see directly someone cannot work. So it's cost intensive. A developer cannot work. We need to pay him 2,000 euros a day, and he cannot start to work. That is really a massive cost. But the accounts at the end, if there is a security breach, because an account is still used, even when the person already has left the company, I think the damage or the risk is much higher for the company. But that is a little bit depending if the security team is already one of the drivers of the project, or is it more the business part, which is more, yeah, looking into costs and return on invest and so.
Okay, cool. So that means the prioritization of such a project or automation needs to be discussed in these kind of steps, and what kind of impact it has on data quality and all the processes. So yeah, that's good to understand. So we now talk now a bit about, yeah, let's say homegrown application which are something special in such a project. So in my experience, I was also an integrator in the previous years. So that could be also a challenge. How do you plan to deal with these? So how do you start a project with some homegrown applications in focus? So when are they integrated? Are they main focus? How do you handle these?
If I probably kind of talk from a technical point of view here, two things. One, again, like 2 or 3 things which I can point out is what is a connectivity type that is exposed from these homegrown applications, right? So these applications can be on-prem or they can lie anywhere, right? So my first approach or the first step which I would take in implementing or connecting to these applications is to understand what is the connectivity method which these applications are exposing, okay? And then again, like I would split it into 2 things, right? Connected or a disconnected application primarily, right? So if there is a connectivity method available, I will use the existing connection present within Saviynt and then talk to these applications, okay? And then if it's not a connected application, then either I can automate the process by calling the REST APIs of the product, which if it is offering anything as such, okay, that would be my second point. Or we can kind of keep the 2 interfaces separate and manually try to load the data into Saviynt, perform your IGA activities within the product or any, not just Saviynt, right, in any product, and then push the data back to the customer so that they can perform those changes at their side, right? Pushing data from a product to the customer is easy, right? You can build some custom reports which would capture this particular data within the product and send them as emails to the customer, okay? Or you can drop files on their customer location with what has happened within the product, right? So my approach would be to first to understand if there is a connectivity available to these applications, the custom applications. If not, what are the other approaches which I can take to integrate these applications, right? That is a technical point of view. Before this, what I would focus on, again from an integration perspective, is to understand the data model of the application, irrespective of whether it is a homegrown application or whether it is a common application like Salesforce, SAP, or any cloud application, right? So my focus from an integration perspective would be to understand the data model, okay, so that I can convert the data model into the respective structure which is followed in the product, right? So my focus would kind of be first on understanding the data model, understanding the feasibility of how much I can do or how much I can automate the entire application. If not, I would rather look for some other alternates wherein I can bring the data from the application, put it in the product, perform my IGA operations, and push the data back to the customer so that the application owner or the resolver can take the respective actions on the custom application. So probably my approach would be into these two steps. Yeah.
What I also experience at a lot of customers is you investigate a lot of time in maybe RUC-F special applications, and then you have a RUC-F connector which just collects accounts and maybe groups. That is mostly what the connector does. And then the rest of information is stored in some kind of a custom DB2 table. And then there are running COBOL programs on those data in the databases for each application. And that is something that is quite complex on both sides. So if you want to support that, that is really something, it's really homegrown. But in a lot of projects, we could convince the customers to say, look, it is not in your interest to buy in always COBOL programmers. And they really start to set up a standard web service interface that can be connected from everywhere, from every application, and it's a standard. So even tools like, we can use standard interfaces like REST APIs with standard calls to even retrieve the information. And they are future-proof then after refactoring it, because the COBOL programmers, you will not get them on the market. So we really saw that a lot of customers are investigating in that and saying, okay, at the beginning it hurts because we need to change a lot of things, but at the end, the invest was definitely, it was returned definitely. And then you have all the tools, all the possibilities with Saviynt and maybe also with other tools, whatever, to retrieve this information. But if you stick to standards, also with that homegrown applications, already at the design, it will definitely help in that. I think databases are always standard connectors. SAP is some kind of standard, even custom tables or something like that.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So after we have seen now that we have integrated these kind of identities, that we have onboarded identities, there's also this kind of access request system, or that you can retrieve entitlements or roles by yourself, that you can say, oh, there was something missing by the automation process. So what kind of customizations did you need to fulfill some of the requirements customers have raised in regards to such a project?
Okay. See, again, it depends on what the customer wants to do. In my opinion, I would support this argument with a couple of examples from my past experience, and also one example, right, which we are working right now, or one use case which we are working right now. So the customer can choose to directly use the request module within the product. Okay. Wherein the end users will come to the product and then log in through SSO, etc., and all, and then do a self-service, or they can request to somebody else as well, right? So that is a standard approach which any organization would like to take, and also we particularly push for that particular approach, wherein the end users land on some particular page within the product, they request for something, whether it is for a fresh account or whether it is for adding an access or removing an access, anything, right? That is straightforward, right? That anybody can do, or any product should be able to do that, right? So to support this, what additionally would come along with this particular standard approach is the visibility of the data, or limiting the end users to see what they're entitled to, right? What authorization I'm giving an end user to request for a particular resource, right? Say there are say some highly privileged accesses, okay, or some licenses in SAP which I should not be able to request, or I'm not entitled to request, right? So limiting end users to what they request is something, or what they should request is something which is very important. One, you have to limit it at the request level itself, point number one. Second, you can limit it by introducing something called segregation of duties, a preventative one, wherein for example, I'm requesting for 2 licenses in SAP which are conflicting to each other, and I'm not supposed to request for both the licenses. We are alerting the end users wherein a warning or something will be displayed to the end users, wherein they are informed that if you request for these two different accesses, it would lead to a conflict or a violation afterwards, right? So this would be the standard approach, or this would, and then you can play around with workflows behind the screen, wherein if a request is submitted, the workflow should be able to understand what is submitted in the request and then reroute the request to the according or the concerned approver levels, right? It could be a user group or a application owner or anything, right? So this would be the standard approach, wherein you limit the authorization of end user to a particular application only on the end user request form. After that, you can put segregation of duties as a preventative activity, and then you can limit it at the workflow level. Obviously, the approver should have the knowledge of whether this particular user should be able to request this particular access or not. So my fourth level of defense would be the approver, who should be able to reject or approve that particular entitlement or access which the end user is requesting, right? So I would split the standard approach like this, right? I have one more example with me, or another use case that we are working right now in terms of customization is third-party applications which act as a face for end users, okay? And the end, because the company is used so much to that particular third-party application that they expect the end users to submit a request from that particular application, and that application will reroute the request to your product, and something happens within the product, right? So one such example would be using Jira as the end user request form, okay, wherein the customer is asking the end users to go to Jira, or the customer is wanting the end users to go to Jira and then submit a request there. That should trigger some process within Saviynt, right? It could be a create account, or it could be adding an access, etc. Right? So this is a complex approach which some of the customers have taken, or right now I'm as well working on one of the major use cases, right? In this situation, it becomes little complex because one, you need to educate the customer that it is easier for the end user to land on the request homepage directly or the request page directly within Saviynt instead of pushing a third-party application. Why this has to be avoided? Point number one, like, it involves customization, right? It involves somebody to integrate Jira with Saviynt, wherein a request is submitted at Jira that needs to be processed in Saviynt. Once a request is processed in Saviynt, that response needs to go back to Jira, the ticket needs to get closed, etc. and all, right? So we have also completed such kind of complex cases or complex scenarios wherein customer introduces a third-party application in between, like ServiceNow or Jira, wherein the requests are triggered from that particular application. So I think these are the two typical examples or two typical methods which enterprises would follow, right? But as I said, if it is a fresh implementation, it's not a migration project or a fresh implementation, you have the leverage to push the customer, to educate the customer or educate the end users that they come to the product or they land on Saviynt and then submit an access request for themselves. That's how kind of I see the request processes to be differentiated.
Okay, cool. So as we have now discussed several topics about the implementation and how we can basically run such a project, the question is, and what I already raised in the beginning, is how do you ensure the success of such a project? And success means in this kind of approach, the acceptance also during the implementation. So how do you achieve this?
Yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah, just one thing would definitely be, I think most of the projects we have or where we are involved are mostly planned agile. So in case something changes and the product owner decides, okay, this is more important for the acceptance, why ever, then we change the whole plan within the project. So it's not really strict. You have some phases and you commit to some targets, aims, or where you are focusing on. So what is in scope, what's out of scope, but it might even change. And if this is aligned also with the stakeholders, it's fine. So you give them also the feeling their ideas and their mind is counting. So you change it because, the requirements have changed. And I think that is something that is basically for IGA. I would not even say projects. It's more program, because it's never ending. A project has a fixed start and end date. IGA is mostly a program.
Okay, cool. And how do you handle and manage the relationship with the business owners then?
So we mostly, in an agile approach, we have usually business parts in there, and we also have technical parts in there. So mostly the stories start with business parts, where you align with the business, and then you get further down, and out of those business stories you get technical stories. And those business stories are mostly the drivers, where you will, where you start with your scopes and what will be done within, or what needs to be achieved within the next program increment.
And I guess the key KPIs you have defined in the beginning will help you to also satisfy then the requirements, or also the stakeholder needs, to show, look, we have discussed that in the beginning, these are the KPIs we have followed. Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
You promised that at them at the beginning, yeah, right. And if you now say, okay, we did this at the beginning, but forget about this, was nice talking, but none of our interests, so now we're doing something totally different, that, for sure, that is very important in that case. You always come back to the red line, but it might be not a red line like really straight. It might be also, depending on the needs of the customer, that you have corner cases that get more important, security cases or whatever.
Okay, cool. And you mentioned such a project never, so not never, but it has not a fixed end date. So what do you mean? Is it that the customer has to run it all the time, or what does it mean exactly?
So usually I would say, even what we saw with projects like with Saviynt, some on-prem products are totally different, because if you run with these products, you will keep the developers 20 years within your company. If you have special things, you always will buy them in, and they will do things for you. With such products like Saviynt is different, because if you have really people that get used to the product, they can nearly start from the beginning, and they see how easy it is to do things on their own. It's just, if you have a new connector, you need someone like Srikanth who will help you. But afterwards you see, okay, I understand how this works. If we document it in the right way, I can even do the next thing on my own. And there are definitely people on customer side which have this experience. You don't really need developers. You just need to understand the kind of configuration. And that is really much. There is a big difference to a lot of on-prem products. You don't need a Java developer. It helps you to understand SQL, and it helps you to understand how JSON objects are built. But if you have samples, I think that is even for a non-programmer, it's much easier. So you have the first 2-3 years, you are guiding the customer and you're helping him. But from that point on, and I think that is one of the decisions why customers decide for Saviynt. They don't want to have the partner or a technical experienced guy within the project for 10 years. They can take over more and more.
Absolutely. So that's also what we have seen from the customer base, so that we have, for example, the workflow designer based on a integrated UI designer, drag and drop, and all these kind of things. Yeah, absolutely. But after we have now integrated all the applications, we have integrated the workflows, what could be the next step? So what can I do after I did IGA?
Again, right? I mean, if I kind of start with that particular question, you finish off your user import process first. You jump to application onboarding second, which is important because the purpose is to manage your target applications. After this, once this is successfully kind of pushed into production, we can start concentrating on the miscellaneous use cases or the secondary use cases, which involve recertification, segregation of duties, mitigation controls, or various other things, right? This is something which has to follow subsequently, okay? Because you have the data, you have the identities. Identities are mapped to the respective accounts and access within the product, but you need some sort of governance on top of the data what you have, right? Or some kind of an authorization model need to be implemented so that everybody should not be able to see everything there, right? Or the product also should cater the needs of access misuse or various other things, right? So we would start with something like pushing your IGA use cases, which is very important, and then that can follow with reporting functionalities, right? Wherein a customer would come up, so there's an audit happening at a customer level, right? So they want your SOC reports or various other things, right? So these can be or should be able to be accommodated inside the product, wherein they help the customer in such situations like audit or to manage the data or to understand what is happening within the product. So I would start with probably an IGA implementation if they have an SAP GRC or they need to do some governance across Oracle EBS, for example. So that will follow subsequently, right? And then we can put other upsell activities or cross-sell activities like reporting, dashboards, and various other things, right? Yeah, I mean, probably that would be the approach which I would rather take. Yeah.
I think what you want to point out is what we cover with the IGA project is mostly we start with personal accounts.
Yes.
Sometimes we introduce also some kind of technical accounts.
Yes.
But mostly what is kept out of a project is definitely privileged accounts. So if they see what we can do with those technical and personal accounts, they already think at the beginning about, okay, but we need to handle also privileged accounts, because the risk and the cost is much higher if there is a security breach. So mostly they start already in parallel, but the awareness will be much higher when they see what is doable with IGA. Then next step would be mostly privileged access management.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. So thank you for all your answers you provided to me. If someone of the audience have any questions, feel free to ask in the chat. It was really a pleasure to have this short discussion with you about your experience and what you have seen in the field and how you have integrated, for example, Saviynt projects. So yeah, thank you and have a great day then.
Thank you also from my side. Thank you. Thanks for participating. And as already said, you will get the recording of this discussion from me afterwards. And yeah, then I wish you all a good rest of the day. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.